It is a land so vast, so varied in its treacherous beauty, only the strongest and most stubborn of living things dare to call it home. There is a saying in these parts, if a frontiersman covered 1,000 acres a day, it would take 1,000 years to explore all of the land we know as Alaska. Many take up the challenge, not to defy the wilderness, but to surrender to it, to embrace it. The Kenai Wildlife Refuge is made up of more than 1 million acres. Within those boundaries lies one of just 2 wilderness canoe systems in the U.S. Portages connect some 70 lakes. When you run out of water, you pick up your canoe and carry it to new water.
There are many ways to see the Alaskan wilderness, but the Kenai Trails by canoe is a pretty good way to go.
Mike Adlin has paddled through the system many times, but says it never looks the same. It is an ever-changing experience.
When I'm by myself, I can trek into the lakes pretty fast, and yeah, it's relaxing. We try to get out here and as much as we can. And
fishing? Yeah, I'm camping and fishing. Yeah.
We cover quite a few miles over 2 days and see just one other canoe the entire trip. Wildlife, on the other hand, is everywhere. We have kicked up 2 moose calves and their mother. The calves are just a few days old. We are lucky not to be caught between them and the cow. Moose are very aggressive, especially when their young are threatened. In this case, the cow and her newborns have found cover in the nearby brush. Nearly every trail in this wilderness has a story.
moose calf leg. This wasn't here when we came through, but earlier. You can tell by the broken bone there that had to be a pretty good sized animal to break. It's not too old of a kill. Something, it's broken. Bone's broken. Something to break that bone, it would have had to have been a bear, took it down. And probably a smaller animal's been dragging it off from the kill site.
The victim was a yearling. Juvenile moose are most vulnerable to predation because they have not yet gained the size to deal with a predator like a bear.
They're not as tough and mobile as a large adult moose that can just cruise through some timber and actually fend off an attack.
When the fish are jumping, one is compelled to stretch a line.
Nice fish.
Rainbow trout are found through most of the Kenai canoe system. It's all wild stock. There are few places like the Kenai canoe trails, where the earth and its community of life are untrammeled by humans, where man himself is a visitor who does not remain. Mike has such an affinity for the canoe trails, he has made it his business to be here much of the time. He does that by hiring himself out as a wilderness guide.
Most people wouldn't even consider going to where they work to relax, but in this case out here, this is where I work and where I relax.
Most outdoorsmen care deeply about the preservation of the land and cannot wait to discover more of it.
Yeah, this used to be a beaver dam. It's kind of half is yet. This lake and several others up ahead, they're connected by little channels, little creeks such as these. You can see some eaten freshwater clams down here, and there's one right there. The otters love these, and beavers, I guess, also eat them too.
To those who embrace the vagaries of nature, Each challenge becomes part of the changing hue and texture of the Alaskan landscape. So much to explore, and always a new discovery just around the bend. We have joined a team of marine scientists from the Alaska Sea Life Center headed for Squab Island in the back of Ayalik Bay in south central Alaska. We must move slowly and carefully through the glacier ice. There is no room for error. The water is so cold, we could survive only a short time, even with survival suits on. It is believed the journey is worth the effort because this area is remote, making it excellent habitat to study harbor seals in their natural environment. The seals use the ice that breaks off Ayalik Glacier as living platforms.
They will haul out and rest on it. They'll give birth to their pups on it, and so it becomes very important habitat for these animals.
The seals also use the icebergs to avoid predators.
And we've seen orcas come out and around here, and as long as the animals stay on ice, they're relatively safe. Of course, once they're in the water, then they become fair game.
Predators are a natural part of life for harbor seals. Dr. Atkinson wants to know what's causing the bigger problems.
In the past 20 years, we've seen the number of harbor seals here decline quite rapidly, but about the same amount that they have all across the Gulf of Alaska. And so the studies that we're doing on these animals is to try and understand what they need in terms of their habitat and what may be lacking.
Just around the Cape is Resurrection Bay. Framed by steep-sided valleys, the bay opens into the mouth of the Gulf of Alaska. Most of the wildlife continues to rebound from the effects of the Exxon Valdez oil spill, which damaged hundreds of miles of shoreline, killing thousands of seabirds, fish, and mammals. The disaster brought to light the need to know more about Alaska's marine system and how best to protect and preserve it. Exxon Valdez settlement funds helped to build the $56 million Alaska Sea Life Center here on the water's edge in the town of Seward. A 105,000-gallon seabird exhibit and education center houses different species of alcids, diving seabirds. They seemingly fly underwater, sometimes hundreds of feet below when chasing prey.
That's actually air bubbles coming off of their body. It kind of gives it a shine. And what happens is they tend to spend a lot of time on the surface preening and actually getting oil on their feathers, and that helps with the waterproofing.
Red and black-legged kittiwakes are seen by the thousands in the wild, but because they nest in sheer cliffs, they're difficult to study. Here at the center, researchers are learning more about them. Tufted puffins build nests just as they would in the wild.
And these birds will lay one egg, and they'll both incubate it, which is lay on the egg and keep it warm, and they'll both feed it once it hatches. So you can see he just sort of put out his feathers and puffed his chest, and that's actually how they get their name, puffins. They sort of puff up their chest like that. And he's kind of probably showing her what a good man he is and being able to pick up some nest material.
The stellar sea lion population in the Gulf of Alaska has taken a turn for the worse. Since the 1970s, 80% of those living in the Gulf have disappeared. Scientists have set up a remote microwave viewing station at a stellar sea lion haul-out and rookery on Chiswell Island, 35 miles from the Sea Life Center. It allows them to view natural behavior around the clock. Visitors to the center are able to watch the same live feed. It is not uncommon to witness a birth. The remote viewing station on Chiswell has proven so successful, the researchers have duplicated the idea for harbor seals here on Squab Island.
Remote Ayalik Bay offers an excellent window into what's going on with the marine environment in south central Alaska.
Researchers want to know why a population of 1,600 harbor seals has fallen to fewer than 300 since 1980.
We see nice, fat, good-looking moms, although the numbers are low. The pups look relatively healthy, but one of the things we need to find out is what we see and what's real in terms of their physiology. Are they the same thing?
Which is why behind the scenes in the lab at the Sea Life Center, Dr. Atkinson is conducting regular tests on captive harbor seals in search of answers.
They metabolize a whole lot more in the winter than in the summer. So if their metabolic rate is increased, we know that then their blubber thickness should be thicker in the winter than it is in the summer. And during the winter, to imagine a mammal living in this environment is really impressive, because something this small has to just metabolize like crazy to stay warm.
A captive seal's diet can be altered and responses monitored. Feeding habits in the wild are being observed through the remote viewing station. Researchers are also able to monitor mating, pupping, how a mother seal raises her young, and natural changes to the environment.
The most fascinating thing to me is that global climate change is occurring, and the places that you can see it occurring the fastest are in these areas around Arctic regions. And because we're here, we're on the water, we're in these areas, we can actually document part of it to understand how species cope with change.
By using this camera system, we don't have to, we come maybe to the island once a month, check on the equipment, and we can be a lot more selective about when we come and a lot less invasive on the seals. So we see a lot more of their natural behavior. This pup here is a pretty young pup, probably less than 3 days old. And so the mom has to be fairly careful with her pups and find suitable bergs that the young pups are able to climb out on. As we've seen with this particular pair, the pup has both been energetic in that it has wanted to go back into the water even after it's been out on the ice, but it's also had difficulty climbing up on certain bergs. From our perspective, it looks like a fairly harsh environment sitting on top of an iceberg and floating around in just barely unfrozen water. So the transfer of energy is very important. This particular pup is a very energetic pup.
If the research scientists are successful in isolating and solving problems facing harbor seals, then perhaps in the near future, the trend will be reversed, and scenes like this will again become the rule rather than the exception. Fishing is a favorite pastime in Alaska. Many people come here to visit for that reason. Some never leave. Such is the case with these two men from Hawaii who are wetting a line just as the salmon season begins. It's really too early for a major salmon run, but Ship Creek is not far to go. It runs through the heart of Anchorage.
Everybody's real mellow up here, and most of the time the fishing's really great.
Both Roy Jarvis and Kyle Marquez first came to Alaska in the Air Force. Hawaii people have a way of finding each other.
We're never far from home because we're always with locals. Hawaiian clans up here are strong and alive, and all of us pretty much enjoy living up here.
Kyle is based away from Alaska now, but when fishing season rolls around, he finds a way to come back.
They can't seem to take me away from this place. I always come back. I love the fish.
As we speak, a king salmon exposes itself in the shallow water. The fish is large, about a 40-pounder, and does not have much water to operate in. The local boys are no longer fishing, they are chasing. Everyone is pretty excited because the king salmon is one of the first of the season to run up this river. It is lucky to have eluded Kyle, who chased it 100 yards.
Well, you know, Gary, you have to do what you have to do. I mean, when the fish are running and they're teasing you, you have to go get them.
Ah, fishing season is underway. Ron Smith and a chip off the old block, Ron Jr., climb into inner tubes to fly fish for trout in mountain lakes. There are some 20 lakes in the Anchorage area, and nearly everyone can get to one in less than 10 minutes. The tubes allow them to go where the fish are. Ron and Ron propel themselves across the lake by using their fins. They are able to determine pretty quickly where the fish are biting and which flies are most effective.
These are actually called V-tubes. They also make them that are completely round like a donut, and they've got them like kind of like a U-tube. And it kind of gives everybody the captain of their own ship this way. They're real light. You can pack them into little lakes and whatnot.
I like them a lot because you can get out and away from the people that are on the shore, and you don't have to deal with the congested shorelines and such. And you can just get out here and enjoy yourself, kick around. And it's not bad exercise.
Ron has been taking Ron Jr. fishing with him since he was old enough to walk. And together, they land one fish after another.
It makes me real proud to, coming out here with him and fish with him. Except, of course, when he's just, fishing the socks off me, and then it's not quite as much fun for me, but it's a lot more fun for him on those days. So, yeah, it's great.
As father and son have discovered, an afternoon on the lake becomes so much more than catching fish. To break into the lineup on the Kasilof River when the king salmon are running, one must get here early. Motorboats are not allowed in this river. They are all powered by an oarsman who doubles as the guide. We have decided to go with Bo Ansel. Bo knows fishing, and like so many other fishermen up here, he has a good time. The guides know where all the good fishing holes are. Bo is especially good at knowing how to ride the tide.
When the tide comes in, it brings the fish into this river. This river is really tide orientated. It turns the bite on and off. And when the tide starts going back out, those fish start moving upriver. And usually you start picking up quite a few fish.
Earl Fronner lives near here on the Kenai River and in Hawaii part of the year. He goes fishing to breathe the air.
Oh, I just love the outdoors. And it's always nice to catch a fish, but it's not the most important thing.
The greatest challenge on the 6-mile Kasilof belongs to the guide. They must maneuver the boats into position and then very often hold the boat against the tide. Bo thinks the work is worth it.
When you get motors out here, it gets loud and causes lots of boat wakes, and it just keeps your habitat along the river in good shape.
The river is not reserved for boats. When the run is on, fishermen are working the banks too.
This is the roe out of the salmon, and we cure it and put a red dye on it. And there's some chemicals in there that kind of make the eggs a little firmer.
Seems to work. I'm hooked up to a 20-pound king salmon. Next to us, one of Bo's other boats, also landing a nice fish.
I think what's nice about the kings is you're only going to get in maybe 1 out of 4.
The Kasilof is stock enhanced. Many of the king salmon that return to this river are hatchery fish. This one, however, is a native.
Beautiful fish. See, most of the hatchery fish have this adipose fin clipped.
It tells conservation-minded fishermen which is which, so they can release the better breeding wild stock.
Okay, we're gonna let him go. Here we go.
Earl is right. Catching a fish is nice, but the best thing about being here on the Kasilof River is just being with friends, outdoors, breathing the air in a most incredible Alaskan frontier. It is a frontier even better than the dream, where adventurers become part of the fabric we call nature. There is a wonderful heartbeat heard in this land. Extraordinary is a wilderness where souls are weighed and men can become boys again. So difficult to leave it, but we must always leave it, and that others will know the pure joy of adventuring Alaska.